Hello and welcome to GCN. This is our big Giro d'Italia preview show. I'm Daniel Lloyd and alongside me is another former professional rider, Simon Richardson.
Yeah, thanks Dan. So the Giro is one of the 3 grand tours of the year. It's 21 stages and it's covering about 3,400 kilometres. Dan, what do you think this year's route is going to throw up for the big contenders?
Well, we obviously start in Napoli and it's quite a flat road stage. It's the first time in many years actually that it started with a bunch road stage as opposed to an individual time trial or a team time trial. So we've also got Mark Cavendish licking his lips at the prospect of not just winning the stage but going into that leader's pink jersey as well.
Now in total there are 6 summit finishes in this year's Giro, which really makes it one for the climbers. A lot of people are going to be looking at Bradley Wiggins as a possible favourite, aren't they? Do you think that it's going to be too hard for him with those summit finishes?
Well, looking at the route as a whole, it seems very stacked into that final week. We do have a long 55-kilometre individual time trial, which will of course favour him, but that is the only flat time trial in the race. There's a team time trial, so Sky will look to take some time there. There's a mountain time trial, but that doesn't really favour Brad any more than any of the other favourites. So it will be interesting to see going into it as the winner of last year's Tour de France. It's very difficult to count Bradley out of the overall contention, but he's going to face some stiff competition, not least from the likes of Vincenzo Nibali of Astana.
Yeah, so we've talked about 2 now, so Wiggins and Nibali. Who else do you think we're going to be looking at over this 3-week period?
Well, we've got Cadel Evans as well from BMC, who's been kind of a late call-up for their team. He decided just a couple of months before the race that he was going to take part, and it's his first participation in a couple of years now. You can never count him out. He's been a former Tour de France winner as well. But beyond that, we've also got the likes of Michele Scarponi. There's a few others that can throw themselves into the mix as well.
Yeah, okay, interesting stuff. And what about in terms of the sprinters? Do we know who we're going to be looking out for? You mentioned Cavendish, obviously. He's going to be in the hunt again because he loves this race, doesn't he?
Yeah, it looks likely that we're also going to see Matt Goss, who won a stage up in Denmark last year, where the Giro d'Italia in 2012 started. We've also got the likes of Roberto Ferrari, who's moved from Androni to Lampre this year. He trumped Cav in his hometown, or Cav's hometown in Italy last year for a stage win, so he'll also be looking to add to his palmares.
Yeah, last year we saw some pretty fraught sprint finishes, didn't we? Especially that one where Ferrari took Cavendish out. So I wonder whether there's going to be a bit of a grudge match going on.
I'm sure there will, but as Cavendish always does, he just focuses on his own sprint finish and doesn't worry about the rivals around him. But it's very hard to count him out of that first leader's pink jersey, that's for sure.
Last year, the outcome of the Giro d'Italia hung in the balance until the very last stage. But the race actually started outside of Italy in Denmark, whereas this year it stays in Italy, in Naples. Dan, apart from that geographical difference, how else do the routes compare or differentiate?
Well, if you look at a map, they look completely different because, as you said, they started right up in Denmark last year, then had to fly down. They actually didn't get too far down south, but this year, starting in Napoli, it heads south from there. So it looks very different, but in terms of the profiles of the stage, it's quite similar in some ways because it's very weighted to that last week. A lot of mountain stages coming in quick succession in the final week of the race.
Last year we had that rivalry between Hesjedal and Rodriguez. That was one of the best bits of stage racing I think I've ever seen. What about you?
Yeah, it was fantastic because I think Hesjedal didn't really go into the race as one of the big favourites, as it were. He took the pink jersey after the team time trial, which his team Garmin SHARP won. And after that, the other contenders still didn't really take him too seriously, but he was never dropped, and in fact, he was attacking them at points. It was a ding-dong battle. The jersey passed between Rodriguez and Hesjedal a number of times, and it was actually Rodriguez that still held it on the last day going into that final time trial. But Hesjedal had enough in his legs to overtake Rodriguez and take his first ever Grand Tour win.
Yeah, and we actually caught up with Ryder after the win had sunk in last year over in Italy.
The Giro is just special. It's Italy. It's just the passion of the racing, the history.
But it's not just about the general classification contenders. We've also got a number of sprint stages. And amongst the best sprinters in the world at the moment is Mark Cavendish. And we caught up with him at the end of last year.
There's a good 5 stages next year that will be sprints, and especially the first stage, it's a circuit race in Napoli, and it'd be really nice to put on a Maglia Rosa again.
So Mark Cavendish has obviously got a clear idea of what's ahead for him in terms of sprinting. Dan, you've had a little bit more time to digest the route than he had when that interview was carried out. Is he right? Is he looking at 5 stages?
Well, when I looked at it yesterday, it looked to me like there's 4 guaranteed sprint finishes. Of course, the big one for the sprinters is the first one because it's not just the stage win on offer with that leader's pink jersey. The last one as well seems to be a guaranteed sprint finish, but of course the sprinters have got to get through a number of mountain stages in that last week just for their last chance at a sprint win. There's another 2, and there's another few stages which are predominantly flat, but as the Giro d'Italia organisers quite often do, they've added a couple of nasty little climbs towards the finish, which means it's good for the viewers because you don't know whether it's going to end up in a sprint or if a breakaway is going to stay away to the finish. Yeah,
now it's very interesting that you mentioned that last stage now being a sprint, because last year obviously Cavendish was going for that red jersey of the sprint competition leader. He suffered through the Dolomites and was trying to hold on to it, but lost it and had no way of regaining it for that last stage, which was a time trial. How determined do you think those sprinters are going to be to get to that final stage?
Well, it's obviously the carrot dangling at the end for them. I mean, it is hard as a sprinter to get through those mountain stages, especially if you've got nothing else to go for. You might not have a GC rider which you need to help at the start of the mountain stage, so you are literally just clawing your way over the mountains just in order to have your final pop at the cherry on that last stage. I'm not sure whether Cavendish is going to go the whole 3 weeks this year. I know he does want to win that points jersey before the end of his career. Whether or not that will be in 2013, I'm not sure.
Yeah, now these jerseys are something that all riders want to win. And the Giro has some kind of mystique about it, doesn't it? We caught up with Michele Acquaroni just to find out exactly what the Giro means.
The Giro d'Italia is not just a race, it's something bigger, it's a kind of love story between fans and their champions.
Now, for people who are perhaps more familiar with the colours of the Tour de France leaders' jerseys, the Giro ones are different. Now, the leaders' jersey is pink, the climbers' jersey is blue. Now, Dan, who are we looking at as possible contenders for this one?
I think it's quite hard at this point to name specific names as who's going to be going after that classification, but it won't be somebody from the GC because there's always a breakaway out the road that scoops up those intermediate points, and so the GC riders just don't get the chance to go for maximum points over a lot of the mountains. So I think whoever wins that jersey is going to be a good climber who's also not afraid of attacking.
Now, we've already thrown Mark Cavendish's hat into the ring for him for the red points jersey. Dan, who are his rivals going to be for this one, you think?
Well, interestingly, the points jersey at the Giro is a little different to the Tour de France in that the points on offer at the end of the mountain stages here are the same as they are on the flat stages, so it doesn't favour the sprinters as much as it does in the Tour de France. So last year, as we saw, it was a climber and a GC rider, in fact, who came away with that jersey, Joaquin Rodriguez of Katusha. Mark Cavendish went into the penultimate stage wearing it, and he just lost it by a matter of 1 or 2 points. I know he was absolutely gutted.
Yeah, well, hopefully that one will again come down to the wire this time. Now, someone who's always there or thereabouts at the Giro is Ivan Basso. Is he going to be a contender?
I don't think it's something that you can count out. I mean, he's won the Giro twice. The last time was back in 2010. I was riding that year and he looked very good from start to finish, as you need to be, obviously, to win a 3-week Grand Tour. Interestingly, that year his teammate that helped him the most was Vincenzo Nibali, who's now on a rival team at Astana and one of his key rivals. Last year, Basso was really on the back foot right from the start of the season. He suffered a crash. He had a couple of injuries as well, I think, along the way. He was consistent during the Giro, but he just didn't have the punch that he needed to really utilise the work that his team Liquigas did for him at the time.
But he's not actually shown any signs of strength this year either, has he?
Well, he started his season this year at Paris-Nice, and you're right, we didn't see particularly much of him then. He did get better at Coppa-Ribati. It was a small race, but he ended up 6th overall. I think the key to his season this year is the Giro d'Italia, and we're only going to really see what his form is a couple of weeks before it.
So, is there anything in particular, Dan, that you're really looking forward to over the next 3 weeks, apart from just great coffee and nice food when you're out there?
Well, I think stage 19 looks particularly exciting to watch on paper. It's only a short stage, I think it's just under 140 kilometres, but it goes over 2 climbs which peak at over 2,500 metres, the Gavia and then the Stelvio. So despite the fact there's only 3 days from the end, I think it could still prove decisive. How about yourself?
To be honest with you, I'm really looking forward to the GC battle, actually. There's some incredible contenders, and I'm genuinely really impressed by the fact that Bradley Wiggins has taken what I think is quite a courageous decision to tackle a race that isn't necessarily suited to his abilities, and I can't wait to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. He's going in as, you know, reigning Tour de France champion. The Tour de France last year suited him down to the ground. This one's stacked with climbs in the last week that are also super steep. And is that long time trial long enough for him to make time gaps to his rivals?
So stay tuned to GCN. We've got daily stage previews.
Yeah, and I've been out in Italy myself going over some of the key stages from this year's race to bring you some very in-depth recce films.
And we'll also be at the race itself.
I'm really looking forward to this year's Giro now. I expect you are too. Thanks very much for joining us on our big preview show. Don't forget to subscribe to GCN and let us know your thoughts on who's going to win. You can do that in the comments section below the video.
Clashing colour, so it's a bit sort of pop, you know, like Warhol or people like that would have mixed things like red and pink together.